The Philippine Sea stretches endlessly under a blazing tropical sun. Crystal clear air shimmers at 20,000 feet above the vast Pacific. June 19, 1944, dawns with deadly promise. A young American pilot settles into his fighter's cockpit. The leather seat radiates heat from the morning sun. Aviation fuel mingles with salt air and engine oil. This cocktail of scents defines life aboard aircraft carriers. The USS Lexington's flight deck buzzes with frantic activity below. Deck crews move like choreographed dancers. Their movements show urgency mixed with practiced precision. Everyone knows what approaches. Radar screens have painted the sky with enemy contacts for 60 minutes. The plots reveal terrifying numbers. More than 60 Japanese aircraft streak toward Task Force 58. Additional formations lurk behind the first wave. Fear doesn't touch this American pilot today. His hand rests steadily on the throttle control. Beneath him, 2,000 horsepower rumbles like a caged predator. The Pratt and Whitney engine promises devastating power. 6 months earlier, everything was different. American aviators flew inferior Wildcats then. Japanese Zeros carved through American formations with supernatural grace. Those dark days have passed. Today brings revolutionary change. This pilot commands a machine representing American industrial supremacy. His Grumman Hellcat makes the legendary Zero look ancient. Technology has shifted the balance completely. 300 miles westward, Japanese formations lift off carrier decks. The morning air flows smooth and perfect for flying. Their formation leader allows himself quiet satisfaction. He represents Japan's finest remaining ace pilot. Over 80 confirmed victories mark his combat record. The pilots following him embody the cream of Japanese naval aviation. They fly toward what seems like certain victory. For 3 brutal years, Zeros have ruled Pacific skies. Lightweight construction enables impossible maneuvers. Japanese fighters climb higher and turn tighter than any American aircraft. Their pilots have become living legends. Aerial samurai with mystical skills terrorize American forces. But something fundamental has changed without Japanese knowledge. The Americans are launching unprecedented numbers of fighters, not desperate handfuls, but massive waves climbing to meet them. Japanese intelligence has failed catastrophically. They expect to face familiar Wildcats and perhaps rumors of new designs. Instead, they fly toward technological revolution that will shatter 3 years of air superiority. How could invincible Zeros suddenly become flying coffins? This question would haunt Japanese survivors forever. The transformation didn't happen overnight. American pilots had trained extensively with their revolutionary Hellcats. They learned capabilities that seemed almost impossible to believe. One veteran pilot remembered his first encounter with Hellcat specifications. The numbers told an incredible story of technological advancement. Where Zeros weighed just 5,300 pounds for maximum agility, Hellcats tipped scales at 12,200 pounds. Japanese fighters carried modest armament of cannons and machine guns. American beasts mounted 6 devastating 50-caliber weapons. Raw firepower represented only part of the revolution. Superchargers gave Hellcats something no American fighter had possessed before: the ability to climb with Zeros while maintaining power reserves. Japanese pilots had exploited superior climb rates for years. They lured American fighters into vertical contests where heavier planes would stall helplessly. This tactic became their signature advantage. But supercharged Hellcats climbed effortlessly at steep angles. Many Zero pilots discovered this harsh reality too late. Usually, this lesson became their final education. Admiral Ozawa commanded the Japanese mobile fleet, with apparent overwhelming force. 9 carriers launched 430 aircraft in 4 massive assault waves. Additional land-based fighters and bombers from surrounding islands promised support. On paper, this represented force capable of destroying any fleet in naval history. But Ozawa sailed toward battle with fatal intelligence gaps. American carrier strikes had already eliminated his land-based air support 2 days earlier. His subordinate commander failed to report these catastrophic losses. Ozawa believed he commanded nearly 1,000 aircraft, when reality gave him far fewer. The Lexington's Combat Information Center crackled with electric tension. The fighter director officer studied radar screens showing approaching enemy formations. Next to him, an intelligence specialist adjusted his headphones carefully. This officer spoke fluent Japanese and would spend the day intercepting enemy radio communications. His translations would provide American pilots with advanced tactical warnings. At 10:23 a.m., the fateful order echoed across Task Force 58. Launch fighters immediately. The familiar battle cry of "Hey Rube" rang through ready rooms. Over 200 Hellcat pilots raced toward their waiting aircraft. Thunder filled the tropical air as dozens of 2,000-horsepower engines roared to life simultaneously. Propellers bit deep into warm Pacific air. The American pilot checks his gun sight one final time. Hellcat armament controls allow selective firing patterns: 2 guns, 4 guns, or all 6 simultaneously. For his first engagement, he selects maximum firepower. All 6 guns will fire together, 3,600 rounds per minute of devastating 50-caliber destruction. The approaching Japanese formation makes their first critical error. Instead of pressing attacks immediately, they circle at 20,000 feet to reorganize. Those precious minutes could have been used closing with American fleet. Time wasted in perfectionist formation, flying would prove fatal. The Essex fighter squadron leader spots enemies first. The Japanese formation stretches across the sky like an ominous dark cloud. Easily 60 aircraft flying in disciplined military ranks. But something makes his pulse quicken dangerously. They're flying parade formation, not combat spread. These pilots treat this encounter like training exercise, not life or death battle. As opposing forces converge, stark contrasts become obvious. American pilots fly individually and in loose fighting pairs. 3 years of bitter combat experience shaped these tactics. Each Hellcat pilot thinks independently and adapts to changing situations. Survival depends on flexible response to unexpected threats. Japanese pilots, by contrast, maintain rigid formations drilled during abbreviated training programs. Japan's pilot shortage forced rushed aviator deployment with minimal experience. Many possess fewer than 100 flight hours. Some have never fired guns in actual combat. The stage is set for history's most lopsided aerial battle. Neither side fully comprehends what approaches. Americans know their Hellcats surpass previous fighters, but they don't understand how completely technological balance has shifted. Japanese pilots maintain confidence in zero maneuverability and samurai fighting spirit. They cannot imagine American industry has not only matched, but surpassed their finest aircraft. Minutes remain before the illusion of Japanese air superiority crumbles forever. The first collision occurs at 11:39 a.m. with shocking speed. It ends before most Japanese pilots realize combat has begun. The American squadron commander spots a Japanese formation leader and locks onto his tail from 800 feet distance. The Zero pilot expects traditional turning combat, where superior maneuverability provides advantage. He begins a graceful banking turn to the left. He has no understanding that the Hellcat behind him doesn't need to turn. It can muscle through air, with overwhelming brute force. 650 caliber machine guns erupt in thunderous, continuous roar. The sound differs completely from anything the Japanese pilot has experienced. Not sharp cannon cracks, but devastating hammer blows of heavy machine gun fire. Bullets nearly half an inch in diameter tear through lightweight aluminum skin like tissue paper. The Zero disintegrates instantly. Wing and fuselage pieces spin away in the slipstream. The aircraft cartwheels toward ocean surface, trailing fire and dense black smoke. The American commander barely finishes his first attack when he spots a second target. 8 seconds later, another Zero plummets toward the waves below. Across the vast sky, this pattern repeats with mechanical precision. Japanese pilots attempt every maneuver in their extensive repertoire. Sharp climbing turns, diving attacks, the famous Zero loop that claimed countless American lives. Every tactic that worked against Wildcats fails catastrophically against Hellcats. The American pilot finds himself witnessing aerial massacre. His first target approaches in shallow dive, probably hoping to attack American carriers far below. He angles his Hellcat into intercept course and opens fire at 400 yards range. The effect is instantaneous and absolutely devastating. 6 machine guns pour out 3,600 rounds per minute. The enemy dive bomber simply disintegrates in midair. The engine tears completely free from fuselage. Wings fold upward like closing book pages. Debris peppers his Hellcat as he flies through the expanding wreckage cloud. All around him, skies fill with burning Japanese aircraft falling toward the ocean. He banks left sharply and spots another formation of dive bombers flying tight formation as if on parade. What happens next exemplifies everything Japanese pilots thought they knew about aerial combat being wrong. The American doesn't engage in traditional dogfighting they expect. Instead, he flies straight at them, using Hellcat's superior speed and firepower to blast through their formation. Like bowling ball through pins, he destroys their careful organization. His second victim explodes so violently he must pull up sharply to avoid flying debris. His third target attempts diving escape, but Hellcat's superior power-to-weight ratio allows pursuit. Zero lightweight construction designed for maximum agility becomes fatal weakness against Hellcat heavy machine guns. In 8 devastating minutes, he shoots down 6 Japanese aircraft using just 360 rounds of ammunition. An average of 60 rounds per kill demonstrates the technological gap. When he finally returns to Lexington, photographers capture him grinning and holding up 6 gloved fingers. But his success represents just one small part of larger catastrophe. The squadron commander from Essex claims 5 kills in single engagement. One Hellcat takes 150 hits from Japanese fire, but continues flying. Armor protection that makes American fighters heavy also makes them nearly indestructible. Japanese pilots face technological reality they're completely unprepared for. One surviving Japanese ace later described the terror of discovering American fighters could now climb with Zeros. Americans had always tried following them up, then stalling out and becoming easy targets. But these new fighters kept climbing endlessly. They were stronger, faster, and their guns could destroy Zeros with just few hits. The slaughter becomes so complete that American pilots begin feeling almost guilty. One pilot watches 4 Japanese torpedo bombers flying perfect formation, apparently unaware they're about to die. He lines up on the first aircraft and fires short burst. The plane explodes instantly. The second bomber tries turning away, but the Hellcat overpowers it. Machine guns tear the aircraft apart completely. The third bomber attempts diving toward water, but pursuit continues with continuous firing until the Japanese plane hits ocean in geyser of foam and flame. The fourth pilot, having watched 3 companions die in seconds, simply flies away. The American lets him escape. Plenty of other targets remain available. What Americans don't fully realize yet is they're not just winning a battle. They're witnessing complete destruction of Japanese naval aviation. Each zero that falls represents not just aircraft, but pilot who required years to train and cannot be replaced. Japan's abbreviated training programs produce pilots with minimal experience. Those few veteran aces who remain are being systematically eliminated by American fighters superior in every measurable characteristic. Aboard the carrier Zuikaku, Admiral Ozawa receives first reports with complete disbelief. Staff officers report that first attack wave has been disrupted by American fighters. But the numbers make absolutely no sense. How can 69 aircraft encounter American defenders and have only 27 return? How can experienced Japanese pilots flying legendary Zeros be defeated so completely? The answer becomes clear when survivors land. Their aircraft are riddled with holes from 50 caliber machine guns. Several pilots are wounded badly. Those who can speak describe American fighters that climbed like rockets and fired like battleships. But Ozawa's nightmare is just beginning to unfold. The second wave of 128 aircraft launches at noon. Within 30 minutes, only 31 return to their carriers. The third wave of 47 planes sees half its aircraft get lost trying to find the American fleet. Those that locate the enemy are shot down almost immediately upon contact. By 2 p.m., Ozawa's carriers are nearly empty of aircraft. Of the 430 planes he launched that confident morning, fewer than 100 have returned. Many of those survivors are so damaged they'll never fly again. Staff officers struggle to comprehend the devastating numbers. American pilots have achieved kill ratios better than 10 to 1, performance that should be impossible in aerial combat. The Japanese-speaking American intelligence officer provides final devastating insight. Intercepting enemy radio transmissions, he hears pilots screaming in terror as they encounter Hellcats for first time. Confident morning chatter has been replaced by panic, confusion, and desperate calls for help that will never come. As sun begins setting on June 19, 1944, the age of Japanese air superiority ends forever. In single day, American technological superiority transforms the Pacific War, from desperate struggle for survival into inevitable march toward victory. Japanese pilots who survive return to carriers with new understanding. Their legendary Zeros have become flying coffins. Americans now own the sky completely. The silence aboard Japanese carriers that evening was absolutely deafening. Admiral Ozawa stood on Zuikaku's bridge, staring at tactical board telling story almost too horrific to believe. Of 430 carrier aircraft launched that morning with such confidence, only 35 remained operational. In single day, Imperial Japanese Navy lost more aircraft than any battle since war began. Human cost was even more devastating than material losses. Japan had lost not just machines, but irreplaceable pilots who flew them. The legendary ace who led morning's first attack was among missing. The man Japanese propaganda called Devil of Rabaul had simply vanished into Philippine Sea. Another victim of American 50 caliber machine guns. For surviving Japanese pilots, trauma went far deeper than physical wounds. Their entire understanding of aerial combat had been shattered in a matter of hours. One veteran later wrote about this devastating realization. They had been taught that Japanese spirit and superior training would always overcome American material advantages. But when 6 machine guns can destroy your aircraft with single burst, spirit means nothing at all. Aboard American carriers, mood was jubilant, but tinged with amazement. The Navy's new leading ace, after his 6 kills, found himself surrounded by reporters and photographers. But his thoughts kept returning to Japanese pilots he'd shot down. They were brave men, he told correspondent. They just didn't have right equipment for this war anymore. The technological revolution that destroyed Japanese air power represented more than superior engineering. It reflected fundamental transformation of American industry during World War II. The Hellcat was product of lessons learned in blood over 2 years of combat. Refined by engineers who understood pilot survival was more important than maximum performance. Where Zero prioritized agility above everything else, Hellcat achieved perfect balance: speed, firepower, protection, and handling that modern air combat demanded. Its armor could absorb punishment that would destroy Japanese fighter. Supercharged engine provided power at all altitudes. 50 caliber machine guns delivered devastating firepower. Could down enemy aircraft with seconds of sustained fire. The battle's impact rippled far beyond Philippine Sea. Within weeks, loss of trained pilots forced Japan to begin using kamikaze tactics. Suicide attacks reflected not fanatical devotion, but desperate recognition. Conventional aerial combat was no longer possible for them. Cream of Japanese naval aviation built over decades of careful training had been destroyed in single morning. For American war effort, June 19, 1944, marked moment when technological superiority became overwhelming. Same industrial capacity that produced Liberty ships by hundreds could now manufacture fighters dominating sky. Every major American carrier would soon deploy full squadrons of Hellcats, making Japanese resistance increasingly futile with each passing month. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, as American pilots dubbed that day's slaughter, proved modern warfare had entered new phase. Technological advantage could determine battle outcomes before they were even fought. Brave Japanese pilots who died that day weren't defeated by superior tactics or training. They were overwhelmed by machines that rendered their aircraft completely obsolete. Today, as nations compete to develop hypersonic missiles, stealth fighters, and artificial intelligence systems, the lesson of June 19, 1944 remains startlingly relevant. Technological revolutions don't announce themselves with fanfare or warning. They arrive in form of confused enemy pilots, radioing that their weapons no longer work effectively. Their tactics no longer matter in combat. Their training has become irrelevant overnight. The Hellcat didn't just win the Battle of Philippine Sea, it demonstrated how single technological breakthrough can shift global power balance in matter of hours. For Japanese pilots who survived that terrible day, the message was crystal clear. The age of samurai warrior, no matter how skilled or brave, had ended forever. Ended in face of American industrial might that could not be matched. The devastation was so complete that Japan would never again attempt major carrier operation. Path to Tokyo Bay and ultimate victory now lay open before advancing American fleet. Paved by wreckage of 346 Japanese aircraft that fell like autumn leaves into Philippine Sea. On the day American fighters learned to dominate sky completely. Technological superiority had spoken with voice of thunder. The age of American air dominance had begun with devastating finality. The lesson echoes through decades to present day. In modern warfare, the side with better technology often wins before first shot is fired. Japanese pilots learned this lesson at cost of their lives. American pilots learned they now flew machines that made them masters of Pacific skies. The balance of power had shifted permanently in those 8 devastating minutes of combat.